You look that way. Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. We were just thinking about yeast. Maybe you'd like to join in.
I love yeast.
I love yeast too, although he's got a t-shirt and I don't.
Loser.
Anyway, let's talk about yeast. Go on then.
Yeast! What does it smell like?
Well, have you ever smelled anything like bread or beer that's been left out for too long?
An old man walked past me in the street the other day and I thought, you smell of yeast.
Aren't you trying to tell me that I smell?
I wasn't suggesting you were old.
You know,
You just did that.
I guess we should start at the beginning and say, what is yeast?
Beer? We like beer.
Beer, great.
Bread?
Almost as good as beer.
Marmite. Do you like Marmite?
Oh no.
Other yeast-derived spreads are available.
So you're one of those people that just can't stand anything that's got Marmite on it.
Twiglet's fine.
Right.
It's a living organism.
That's right, yeah. Single-celled living organism. So each individual yeast is a separate life form on its own, but it grows in a big colony of millions and millions of yeast cells.
Have you ever done a Google Images search for yeast?
Stop!
Stop!
Do not Google yeast, especially on the Google Images. You'll get some horrible things. And that's partly because yeast can exist on humans. Humans, animals, plants, in the soil, and even in the world's oceans.
So, it's a fungus.
Well, it's a member of the fungi kingdom, yeah.
It likes warmth,
Right,
it likes moisture,
that's right.
and it's looking for food.
Exactly, yeah. And once it's got those conditions, it can start to grow, and that's when you get either the useful things happening, like in baking and brewing, or the unpleasant things happening.
So its main food is sugar.
That's right. In fact, one of the most commonly used species, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, that actually means sugar fungus. And not only that, but Saccharomyces cerevisiae was the first eukaryotic organism to have its whole genome sequenced. So, do you know how many genes yeast has?
I would guess about 6,000.
That's right, yeah.
6,500?
Yeah, around that for Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Some of them seem to produce functional proteins, others don't seem to do anything too useful, but I'm sure that we'll find out more and more about that as science progresses.
As a comparison, humans have about 24,000 genes.
That's right, yeah. So we've got a lot more genes than yeast, but actually we share about a quarter of our genes with yeast.
All right.
So about 1,500 to 2,000 of the yeast genes we have very similar.
But aren't scientists working on a mutant of the yeast?
That's right. Scientists typically use slightly modified yeast strains that make them a little bit easier to handle in the lab. And they've also created a whole library of yeast mutants in which each individual yeast gene has been deleted. And this is really useful for scientists because they can look at what happens in cells that are missing either just one of these genes or combinations of these genes. And by that, they can figure out what's going wrong in those cells.
Or they can help decipher links between different genes and look at genetic pathways.
That's right, but it would be pretty tough to do it with human cells and human eye colour. But you can take that idea and do a similar kind of thing with the yeast genes. So you can mix up all these combinations of deleted genes and see what happens to the yeast. See whether they shoot X-rays or whether they turn a funky colour.
Cancer research.
Exactly, linking it into human disease.
Now, how many people worldwide are studying yeast at the moment?
There are thousands of yeast labs out there at the moment, yeah.
And is it one of the most comprehensively studied organisms?
Definitely, it's become one of the most popular and best studied model organisms out there for biological research. Because of some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. It's cheap, it's easy to manipulate the genetics, it's safe, and it has a real direct comparison with our own cells. So it's the perfect model organism.
Yeast!